I nearly spilled my wine when I saw him across the crowded gallery. Jace, my high school sweetheart who had disappeared without a trace 15 years ago. Our eyes locked and memories came flooding back. The dizzy excitement of young love, late nights full of laughter, promises of forever. Then the gut-wrenching confusion when he vanished unexpectedly. I watched Jace weave through the crowd toward me, still trim and handsome as ever, though time had etched faint lines at the corners of those piercing green eyes. "Marla," he said, "I can't believe it's you." His voice sent shivers down my spine. "You look incredible." I murmured awkward pleasantries, stunned by this ghost from my past. What was Jace doing back in Colorado Springs after all this time? I noticed no wedding ring on his finger and couldn't help but wonder if he was still the charming heartbreaker who had left me pining all those years ago. "What brings you here?" I managed. "My job. I'm a web designer now, freelance. Just got hired for a project here in town." He seemed nervous. I studied his face, searching for a clue to whether he had thought of me at all during our 15 years apart. Jace suggested grabbing dinner to catch up. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. Over candlelit pasta, wine flowing freely, the conversation turned intensely personal. Jace revealed he had burned out on big city life in Chicago, tired of the rat race and shallow connections. Now here he was, hoping for a fresh start someplace more peaceful. "Maybe this chance meeting is the universe telling me I need to set down roots," he said earnestly. "Reconnect with what really matters." When his hand found mine across the table, my pulse quickened. I thought of my small but comfortable house, my position as project manager in my family's firm, the quiet predictability of my life. Jace's return felt like a spark of electricity jolting me out of complacency. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers with a promise to meet again soon. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning. When Jace called the very next day, I said yes immediately to another date, and another after that. His affectionate attention was intoxicating, exactly what I thought I had left behind in my teen years. He whispered sweet nothings in my ear and showered me with compliments. I felt desired, cherished. Before I knew it, we were officially a couple, seeing each other multiple times a week. My friends were skeptical when they heard Jace was back on the scene. "Isn't he the one who disappeared without explanation?" Cleo said pointedly, "Be careful, Marla." But I brushed off their warnings. When you find a connection like this, you have to see it through, I thought. What if Jace is my second chance at true love? Barely 3 months had passed, yet Jace dropped to one knee and presented me with a diamond ring. "Marla, you are the love of my life," he declared passionately. "I want to spend every day with you. Will you marry me?" My pulse roared in my ears. This was happening so fast, but when you know, right? I gazed at Jace's handsome face and eager eyes. He had lit a fire in my once predictable life. Maybe this whirlwind romance was exactly what I needed. "Yes!" I cried. "Yes, Jace, I'll marry you." He swept me up ecstatically in his arms. I clung to him, dizzied by emotions I hadn't felt since high school. My parents were skeptical when they heard the news. "Shouldn't you take things slow?" Mom asked. "Are you sure you really know this man after just a few months?" "I've never been more certain of anything," I insisted. Jace turned on the charm for them. "I know we rushed into this engagement," he admitted, "but from the moment I saw Marla again, I just knew. She makes me want to be a better man." Mom and Dad eventually acquiesced with tentative blessings. We couldn't afford some lavish wedding, so we opted for a small ceremony at the courthouse with our families and closest friends. I used up most of my savings account on a simple white dress and reception dinner afterwards. But Jace looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world as we exchanged vows, pledging our lives to one another. That night, wrapped blissfully in my new husband's arms, I sighed, "I can't believe we're finally married." Jace nestled his face into my hair. "You've made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." As a wedding gift, Mom and Dad helped us buy a little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. "Consider it an investment in your new life together," Dad said, admiration for Jace replacing his initial hesitations. My heart swelled gazing around our first home, picturing the family we would raise within these walls. Cleo came over the first week after our honeymoon, eager to see how I was settling in as a newlywed. "You look happier than ever," she remarked. "I hope Jace knows how lucky he is." I smiled radiantly. Oh, he tells me every day. My life felt richer and fuller by the month. As I rode this wave of marital bliss, the rapid pace of it all seemed irrelevant. I had everything I could want: the devoted husband, the cozy home, in-laws' approval. What more could a woman ask for? Doubts were a distant memory now. I had made the right choice marrying Jace. I just knew it. The first year of our marriage passed in a blissful blur, but as the honeymoon glow faded, I began noticing strange behaviors from Jace. He started disappearing for hours at a time, never telling me where he was going. Often he came home late, reeking of alcohol, brushing off my worried questions. One night I awoke to find his side of the bed empty. The clock read 3:14 a.m. Sick with worry, I tried Jace's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Where could he possibly be at this hour? At sunrise, he finally rolled in, clothes disheveled, clearly intoxicated. "Where have you been?" I demanded. "I was scared sick." He just shot me a sheepish grin. "Sorry, babe. The guys convinced me to grab some late-night drinks after work. I should have texted." I might have believed his flimsy excuse if it hadn't happened twice more that week. Jace claimed overtime or drinks with colleagues, but when I phoned his office to check, they insisted he had left at his normal time. One afternoon, I stumbled on receipts stuffed hastily in his pant pockets for a fancy necklace and resort hotel stay. Purchases we certainly couldn't afford on our household income. When I confronted Jace, he turned defensive. "You're snooping now? Unbelievable. It was a work trip. The necklace is for you. I can't have privacy?" He stormed off, leaving me standing there, receipt crumpled in my fist, feeling petty and ashamed. But I couldn't ignore the seed of doubt taking root inside me. The next time Jace disappeared, I drove to that resort and asked if a guest named Jace had checked in recently. "I'm afraid we can't disclose private guest information," the manager said. Before I could plead further, recognition flashed in her eyes. "Wait. I do remember him. Had drinks at our lounge bar with some blonde woman. Looked pretty friendly with her." The revelation knocked the wind out of me. When Jace came home that night, I unleashed on him. "Who is she, Jace? The truth." He had the audacity to look wounded. "What are you talking about? There's no one else, Marla. How could you accuse me of that?" "I followed one of your lies straight to that resort lounge," I retorted. "They told me everything." Jace paced angrily. "So now you're tracking my movements? Have you lost your mind?" He stormed towards the door. I refused to endure this constant interrogation in my own home. As the door slammed shut behind him, it finally sank in. The man I loved was not the man I had married. Where had things gone so horribly wrong? Things between Jace and I went from bad to worse after that explosive argument. He was hardly ever home anymore. Strange charges began appearing on our credit card bill, and I could no longer ignore his chemical odor late at night, the dilated pupils and agitated manner. My husband had entered the world of hard drugs. I confronted Jace as he stumbled through our front door, eyes bloodshot and his shirt rumpled. "Where have you been? Are you using?" He glared defiantly, so I blew off some steam with friends. "You gonna punish me for that, too?" "I saw the credit charges, Jace," I said. "Motel rooms, jewelry. This isn't just a little recreational fun. You're lying, doing God knows what with God knows who." My voice broke on the verge of hysterics. "This isn't the man I married." Jace seized my arms and shoved me against the wall. "You want to know what I do late at night?" he spat. "Sometimes I'd rather be with anyone than lie next to your judgmental accusations. Hell, a good hooker accepts my payment without demanding a play-by-play." I pushed him away, stunned by this vicious stranger in my home. "If you wanted out, you should have said so," I cried. "Not drag this family through your sordid double life." Jace's lip curled into a sneer. "Don't lecture me about family values, not when I bust my ass to provide for this one while you sit around policing my every move." His tirade cut me to the core. In desperation, I threatened divorce, but Jace just laughed coldly. "You'll take me back, just like you always do," he taunted. "Big, strong Marla, so tough, yet so gullible." His expression hardened. "But cross me again, and you'll regret it." A chill ran down my spine at those words. That night, while Jace slept, I searched feverishly through his things. Buried deep, I uncovered baggies of white powder, seedy photos of Jace with strange women, thousands in ATM withdrawals. The cold truth stared back. This was no longer my husband, but a hostile imposter who had invaded our lives. In the dead of night, aware I was risking my safety, I began meticulously documenting Jace's more incriminating activities on my phone. A heated phone call with an unknown yelling over payments owed, powder residue on his work desk, unexplained furtive behavior in shadowy alleyways. As the evidence against Jace mounted, so did my agony over the man I had so foolishly entrusted my future to. Worse yet, now merely existing in the same house as Jace filled me with dread, never knowing when his hair-trigger temper might erupt again. Several weeks later, Cleo came over unexpectedly for our usual Saturday girls' brunch. As she chattered away, I mechanically pushed food around my plate, lost in thought, fingers probing the faded bruise on my upper arm hidden beneath a cardigan, a parting gift from Jace during our last scuffle. Cleo's eyes narrowed with concern. "Marla?" Gently she pulled my sweater sleeve back, revealing the ugly purple and yellow mark marring my skin. Her jaw dropped, comprehension dawning. Breaking down at last, I confessed everything. The lying, the cheating, now the fear of my own husband. Cleo enveloped me in her arms as I wept. "Pack your bags," she said firmly. "You're coming home with me." I sprung into action after that painful confrontation with Cleo, determined to shield myself from Jace's downward spiral. His threats still rang in my ears. Crossing him again would end badly for me. First, I stealthily withdrew over 10 grand from our dwindling savings to reopen my old personal checking account. If I made a run for it, I'd need quick access to funds. I stuffed essentials into bags stashed at Cleo's, ready to flee at a moment's notice. My next call was to an old college buddy who now worked in private investigation. I fed Conrad the names of seedy establishments Jace frequented and details of an assault charge during his Chicago days that Jace had conveniently omitted when we reconnected. "I'll run full background checks, dig deeper into recent activity," Conrad assured me. "We'll get clarity on who this guy really is." While anxiously awaiting Conrad's findings, I played the part of dutiful wife at home. Jace remained oblivious to my maneuvers as I continued logging evidence of his misdeeds. Most importantly, I kept close tabs on his packed schedule, noting when he slipped off for his illicit rendezvous. Late one evening, when Jace left for the office, I followed him at a distance to a rundown apartment complex and watched him disappear inside. Conrad's call came just as I witnessed a disheveled woman around Jace's age emerge looking dazed and hollow. Before she spotted me, I hit Conrad's number. "Got back deep records on your husband," he reported grimly. "Guy's in trouble. Mountains of gambling debt, suspected drug trafficking back in Chicago. He's dangerous, Marla." My blood turned to ice. So the man I had welcomed into my bed, my life, my family home, was a complete fraud, capable of God knows what ilk, if I exposed his lies. "There's more." Conrad's voice dropped. "Jace is wanted for assaulting his ex up north. Put her in the hospital with a concussion and 2 broken ribs when she tried leaving him." My knees buckled as Conrad described injuries mirroring my own concealed bruises. I realized then, Jace hadn't just duped me. He had methodically preyed upon my deepest longings to bind me helplessly to him before unleashing his demonic side. And I had danced straight into his trap. "He won't let me walk away easily," I whispered, comprehending my grave misjudgment too late. "Jace will seriously hurt me if he finds out what I know." "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," Conrad said. "I still have law enforcement contacts here. We'll get him arrested safely so you can get free." Wheels turning rapidly, I knew I needed allies for whatever endgame faced me, and Jace. Starting with my family's business, as office manager, I discreetly relocated precious client files and redirects company funds into protected accounts, shielding those assets from Jace's grasp. I strong-armed a bank associate into freezing the remaining savings under my name only. And I informed my family attorney on the sly about my situation, urging him to accelerate preparations for divorce. Finally, steeling myself before meeting Cleo later that week, I confessed my plan to set up Jace's downfall, regardless of the risk I faced. She squeezed my hand supportively. "I've got your back, girl, whatever happens next." The bait was set. I had arranged for an anonymous cash payment to be left at a discreet drop location after feeding Jace a fabricated work emergency. If all went according to plan, he would take the money and run, directly into our trap. My group of co-conspirators gathered at a rented office space near the drop point, reviewing our strategy. My family attorney briefed 2 plainclothes officers on Jace's history of assault. Cleo paced anxiously but nodded reassuringly when I caught her eye, and Conrad scanned area security feeds on a laptop, tracking Jace's movements. I peered over Conrad's shoulder as Jace's car appeared, pulling to the location described in the fake text I had shown him earlier. We held our breath, watching the grainy screen as Jace glanced around furtively before retrieving the parcel and speeding off. "He took the bait. Let's move," Conrad confirmed. We piled into 2 unmarked police vehicles, tailing Jace to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. Undercover cameras captured him exiting his car, parcel tucked under one arm, looking smug as he entered a corner room. It was go time. I waited in the car, heart hammering, while the team stormed in. Even with the element of surprise on our side, the confrontation sounded ugly from my shelter around the corner. Crashing furniture, enraged yelling from Jace, cries of "Get your hands off me!" Then, silence. Moments later, Jace emerged in handcuffs, face mottled with rage as he realized my betrayal. "You set me up, you devious bitch," he roared, fighting against the restraints. "I'll kill you for this, Marla." I met his livid glare unflinchingly, let him spew threats. He was the one in chains now. As officers shoved Jace into the back of a squad car, grim satisfaction swelled within me. We had seized control from my tormentor at last. With the stolen cash and illegal substances found in Jace's possession, plus extensive documentation detailing his shady history, the police had enough evidence to hold him on felony charges. But the most damaging blow to Jace still awaited as part 2 of my plot unfolded. Hours after the motel sting, our town's elite gathered for a lavish business awards gala that I knew Jace planned to attend. Right on cue as the event kicked off, 2 uniformed officers marched through the glitzy ballroom entrance, eliciting audible gasps as they make a beeline for my table. My heart pounded with everyone's eyes upon me. "Marla Brooks, we need you to come with us," the taller officer stated while attendees gawked and murmured. "It's about your husband, ma'am." As instructed, I let out a strangled cry while the officers gently escorted me away. Before disappearing from sight, I glimpsed open-mouthed stares, my name echoing through the crowd. The spectacle was complete. No doubt word of Jace's shame would spread like wildfire. By dawn, his reputation in this town would be destroyed beyond repair. Alone in the ladies' room, I sagged against the wall as relief crashed over me. It was over. My nightmare at long last was finally over. I had reclaimed my life and my future. As tears spilled down my cheeks, an unexpected laugh escaped me. No more hiding, no more looking over my shoulder. I walked out into the night air reborn, unbound, the orange glow of streetlights welcoming me back to the world. In the weeks following Jace's dramatic arrest, I dove headfirst into legal proceedings, determined to nail his coffin shut. Restraining orders, divorce filings, lawsuits against Jace piled up on my attorney's desk as I sought financial and legal reparations. Most crucially, I provided police a full dossier documenting Jace's years of deception. The bruises concealed beneath layers of makeup, frantic texts sent furtively to friends whenever Jace lost his temper. My testimony was damning enough that prosecutors felt confident pursuing domestic assault charges alongside Jace's multiple drug and fraud offenses. When Jace appeared at his preliminary hearing, cocky as ever in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, his smug grin faded as formal charges were presented. His eyes burned with impotent fury when they landed on me sitting resolutely in the front row. The judge set harsh bail terms Jace had no means to meet. As guards dragged my soon-to-be ex back to his cell, his enraged screams echoed through the courtroom. "You'll pay for this, Marla! I promise you, you backstabbing whore!" His words no longer fazed me. They merely sealed his ultimate downfall. In the final divorce decree a month later, the judge took Jace to the cleaners. Due to irrefutable evidence of mental and physical abuse, I was granted our home, remaining household assets, and a hefty alimony settlement given my demonstrated resilience in the face of turmoil. "He deserves worse," Cleo fumed when reviewing the terms. "You went through hell thanks to Jace." I waved her off warily. It's enough knowing karma caught up with him. With multiple felony charges, he'll spend years in prison. That's revenge enough. Rumor mills churned in our small suburban circle about sordid details of Jace's collapsed house of cards. Drugs, cheating, physical assault. My divorce attorney arranged an exclusive tell-all interview for me with the local paper, cementing sympathy on my side. Portray her as the courageous hero who prevailed despite unimaginable betrayal and abuse behind closed doors, my counsel directed. She exposed a dangerous fraud and kept other women safe in the process. I confessed my whole gut-wrenching ordeal to the reporter, the subtle manipulation that seduced me, incremental violence excused away until it became intolerable, the elaborate sting operation that finally halted Jace's reign of terror. I ignored all the red flags because I so badly wanted to believe in second chances, I acknowledged. But some people cannot be saved. Now I advocate for stronger protections to prevent stories like mine. Public reaction to my published account was fiercely supportive. Well-wishers stopped me on the street, praising my bravery. Mothers with teenage daughters made me promise to visit their local high schools, so no other woman falls prey to toxic love like you did. Their faith in me to transform suffering into positive change moved me deeply. From my hometown to the halls of state legislature, I was living proof that even domestic violence victims could reclaim their strength. And redemption never tasted sweeter than the day State of Colorado versus Jace Eaton flashed across my phone screen, signifying the final death knell to my tormentor's devastation. Justice was served at last. With the smoke cleared from legal battles, I shifted focus to piecing my life back together. The house Jace and I had once shared became my solitary refuge, as I grieved the man I thought I married versus the monster revealed. Bitterness still arose occasionally over wasted years chained to Jace's deception. But anger no longer controlled me. Now purpose filled my days instead. Through counseling, I found wisdom and closure. My therapist inspired me to channel hardship into uplifting other women trapped in abusive cycles. Transform your testimony into empowerment, she urged. Let your story give hopeless victims the courage to break free. I began volunteering for a nonprofit domestic violence group, then joined their board to guide strategy. Within a year, I had spearheaded a broad outreach campaign called Rise Above that brought survivor stories into high schools and colleges. I shared my journey escaping Jace's grip to rapt audiences, refusing to gloss over uglier parts. See this scar under my eye? I would point out, a relic of Jace hurling a glass object. I once mistook rage for passion, but violence should never be normalized for the sake of love. My mission to advocate for at-risk women soon grew into a nonprofit venture I founded called New Dawn. We ran empowerment seminars, offered pro bono counseling and legal help, even temporarily housed women fleeing dangerous homes. 3 years later, New Dawn had expanded into 3 counties with a paid staff of 10 running daily operations. We opened new emergency shelters annually. I rubbed shoulders with state politicians and prominent activists as a respected leader in the field. One day, Cleo forwarded me a news article titled "Disgraced Businessman Sent Back to Jail," featuring Jace's scowling mugshot. I skimmed details of his failed parole attempt after serving time for drug charges tied to my case. A small flare of satisfaction rose in me, knowing Florida penitentiaries would remain Jace's miserable dwelling. New Dawn got a shout-out in that story on Jace, Cleo added proudly. They credited your whole movement bringing light to domestic abuse issues locally. My eyes misted reading glowing praise for our collective impact. Perhaps my battered old soul still had some healing left to do. But staring at Jace's hardened criminal face, I felt only detachment, like gazing upon a stranger now. His power to haunt me had faded long ago. The chapter of my life defined by Jace's menacing presence had long since closed. In its place, a confident visionary and nurturer of broken spirits had emerged, one for whom peace and purpose now shaped days where uncertainty and fear once dwelled. Redemption manifests in many forms. Rarely does it arrive as we envisioned. But my second chance was never sweeter.